What is up, fellow humans? Colin here, the Wild CEO, for another video on the carnivore diet. This one is common pitfalls, 4 big pitfalls or mistakes that people make on the carnivore diet that get them hung up and that can lead them astray. The first thing that I see without fail across the board is not eating enough protein. I recommend a range of about 30%. That's a target. Optimize a little bit higher or a little bit lower, depending on your goals and preferences, etc. But if you're looking for an average protein intake that is across the board observed in hunter-gatherers, with 55% being at the high range and somewhere between 30 and 35% being at the average, that's going to be best and most optimal for most people. And if you have weight loss goals, you definitely want to skew that towards the 40% end of the range. The more protein you're eating, the less energy, fat, and carbs you're eating, and therefore the more likely you are to burn fat and lose weight. There's also the thermogenic effect of protein, meaning your body has to process protein, so it expends calories. So if you eat 100 calories of a piece of chicken, for example, of just straight protein, you might only end up with a net caloric intake of, let's say, 60 to 75 calories, because maybe 10, 15, 25% is used by your body just to kind of process that protein and then utilize it. The thermogenic effects of carbs and fat are a fraction of that. Protein is the highest thermogenic effect. So you get that benefit of eating something like 500 to 800 calories from protein a day, but then actually only having a net caloric intake that's 75 to 80% of that, sometimes even more, just depending on the protein and your metabolism and things like that. Number 2 is not eating enough variety of foods. Now, for me, when I went strict carnivore earlier in 2020, it simplified things. It was just steak, and then at night I'd like ground beef. I got bored. It just is what it is. And I'm actually now going back to like a steak for breakfast every meal and actually experimenting with doing steak for 2 meals. Steak at night usually just doesn't appeal to me. It just doesn't sound good. Whereas when I break my fast with it, I love it. It's amazing. So I don't know, maybe that's my body's way of telling me to eat something else and have some variety. But I've noticed that from a mental sanity point of view, and for a prevent cheating and eating out and doing those things point of view, when I have variety in my diet and I'm mixing things up, different cooking methods, etc. For example, I'm doing a slow baked salmon right now, and I'm gonna give you the recipe real quick. Salmon piece, rub it down in salt on both sides, let it sit for a couple minutes, put it on a rack in the oven, 225 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending. If you start seeing a little bit of white on the surface, that's basically done. Take it out. It's the most tender, delicious salmon you've ever had. And you'll kind of experiment with how much salt to use as you do it more and more and you get the technique down. Probably use a little bit more salt than you think, to the point where it's too salty, and then dial it back. And the more you make, the better you'll get. This is right now one of my favorite things. I'm having it a couple times a week. I get a big piece of salmon, put it in the oven, and it's actually really good for leftovers. It's the easiest protein to eat out of the fridge, I found. Salmon that's cold is delicious. Take it right out of the fridge, cold, no reheating, put a little bit of maybe yogurt or maybe squeeze some lemon or something on it, and then just eat it like that. Delicious. And if you're struggling to get your 30 to 35% of protein intake for the day, as I tend to do, I tend to eat more fat and I do get drawn to carbs here and there in different forms. It's hard for me to get that 35%. And so I have to make a conscious effort to eat more protein at my meals, fill myself up, and then kind of fill in the gaps with energy, which is carbs and fat. Salmon is an excellent way to do that. So variety in the food you're eating and the animal sources and even the preparation methods, which is the next one, not using enough cooking techniques, is integral. I think, integral to sustaining a carnivore diet for the long term. If you're the type that just likes clean, easy, the same way every time, and that works for you, that's great. Now, you might run into certain imbalances if you're buying the same piece of steak, for example, from the same producer on the same farm. It might be worth trying to source different cuts of meat, experiment a little bit, buy from different suppliers, just to get a little bit more of a nutrient profile mix. I think generally anything that you can add to your diet that adds variety, even if it's subtle, like I'm having a ribeye from this farm, I'm gonna have a ribeye from this farm. That can have a big benefit. Our bodies are designed to take in a varied mix of food sources and assimilate them and pull nutrients out of them. And so our body's very good at taking multiple foods and getting the nutrients we need. I think the imbalances can come from any diet when you do the same thing too much. Okay, so mix it up, even if it just means a different farm or a different cut or whatever, and then see how your body does. So mix up whenever you can. And this brings me to the next point, not using a variety of cooking techniques. So if you pan fry your steak every single time, you put butter on it, you love it, that's great. Well, maybe try broiling steak. I still haven't quite mastered that. I got to figure that out. I think my broiler, I just need to like let it preheat for a good 20 minutes and then just really pay close attention to that. It makes me nervous because I don't want to base a good piece of meat. I don't want to overcook it. But sometimes in the kitchen, you have to experiment to learn what you like and to get better at your cooking technique. So try that oven roasted technique. Try, I don't know, baking a piece of steak. Try deep frying a piece of steak. Try cooking chicken breast where you pound it really thin, you pan fry it on each side. That's delicious, super juicy chicken. Try a very thin tenderized, like a chicken fried steak. Maybe if you do a little bit of plants in there, you can do like an almond flour crust or something. Or just maybe a little bit of salt and fry it on each side. Try a braise, try soups, try slow cooking, etc. The more variety that you can add to your carnivore diet, the more sustainable it's going to be. And the more variety you add with your cooking technique and the different cuts you're using, the more your cooking repertoire is going to increase. That's another thing. That's going to empower you in the kitchen, and it's going to allow you to stay consistent with your diet. You're always going to have something to make. If you get bored with this thing, you can try something else, and it's always going to taste good. So it's very, very important on a carnivore diet that you're investing in your cooking skill and the different techniques and how the meat that you're buying incorporates into those techniques. Now, for the last one for this video, the fourth biggest mistake that I see is being too strict, falling into diet dogma, which carnivore diet is no different. Carnivore diet is no different. In the diet space, you find dogmas around. You eat this, can't eat this, whatever. The human being, as primal, tribalistic creatures that have lived in the wild for hundreds of thousands of years, we like black versus white. Or I should say, we like black and white. Maybe not black versus white. We like to have this side being good, this side being bad. We like a clear line in the middle. This makes it easier for our species that had to survive and had to rely on heuristics of that's dangerous, that's safe, etc. That clear line kept us safe for hundreds of thousands of years. In our modern world, though, most of the truth is found in nuance. It's a little bit gray in the middle. That's what's best. But we always try to push things to their extremes. Look at politics, look at diet wars, look at lots of different things. We want all or nothing, this or that, I'm good, you're bad, I'm right, you're wrong, etc. But when it comes to nutrition, this is obviously not the answer. So this is how I think about it. If you are doing a strict carnivore diet or a meat-only diet or something like that because you're trying to diagnose an autoimmune issue, then yes, you should be as strict as possible. Or really, if you're just trying to like reset or do anything to really get a baseline down, be as strict as possible. Prove to yourself that you can do it. Then open up. And then don't be so dogmatic and hard on yourself. If you want to have a bite of that apple or have some berries here and there, have them. If you want to have some vanilla ice cream, have it. If you're at a restaurant and you want to eat some bread, gluten, or whatever, and it just generally doesn't wreck you that much, or maybe you should do it anyways and then let it wreck you and then kind of reset your mental of how you think about bread in the first place. That's always a good technique that I use when I'm traveling. I just kind of get sick of eating out and I go back home and I'm like hyped to eat food again. I'm hyped to cook again. So sometimes knowing these things and using them as a strategy for a larger picture of your diet is how you want to think about it. So if you want to have some ice cream or bread or thing every so often, and it helps you stay focused at home, it helps you give kind of a balance, then that's what you should do. Of course, balance and moderation, things like this, I don't like those words. I think people overuse them. They abuse them. Like the average person using the word balance or moderation or everything in moderation or whatever is drinking maybe a soda every single day and having a sandwich or something. Like, it's not our version if we're going carnivore and our idea of moderation. My idea of moderation is like, maybe I have a cheat meal once a week or have dessert once a week or whatever. Or every so often if I'm eating out, I might have whatever I want. And then when I'm home, 95% of the time, maybe higher, I'm eating my strict, typical diet. So don't be too strict. Don't be too dogmatic. Give yourself the leeway to be human and to make mistakes. And if it is a mistake and you look at it as a mistake, then just get back to what you're doing before. Don't repeat the same mistake. Don't compound it. That's 4 big mistakes I see people make on the carnivore diet. There's definitely more below, and I will cover those. So if there's any that I didn't mention that you think that are big ones that I should cover, put it in the comments below, and I'll do it in the next video. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, do all those things that you know to do on YouTube. It does help support the channel, and I can put out more videos like this. I'm putting out a video a day on health, nutrition, and other topics. So I hope you join me. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, Colin here. Got a freebie for you. Click on the button below to go to the ancestralmind.com and download the 7 principles of living wild. This is a short PDF that's got some of the main principles such as real food, sleep, movement, and a couple more that are going to help you live more ancestrally in accordance with your genes.